three key contributing success factors. And those factors, which I've come to refer to as the 3 Ps, the 3 contributing success factors, I would say, are largely people, process, and passion. In terms of those 3 factors, first, people. In the enterprise I've been involved with, I would not have been able to be part of any of that success without the opportunity of being involved with a lot of really good people. To be successful in business, to be successful in enterprise, you need people who are committed, people who are engaged, people who are involved. To be successful, though, also with people, I've also learned it requires leadership. That role of leadership is so important in providing people with direction, providing people with incentives, providing people with motivation. And that leadership is not just at the top. So each of you, when you graduate and join organizations, you'll have that same role, because leadership goes right through an organization, not just at the senior level, but down through the ranks. So each of us will have people that report to and look to us for guidance and leadership. So to be successful, you need people who are providing strong leadership and strong work values. And also, I believe in organization that the structure of organization is so key. When I took business school, we looked at different management structures. One we always talked about was the traditional pyramid structure, with the CEO at the top, executive vice presidents, senior vice presidents, managers on down through the organization. I believe that that organizational structure in today's world is no longer effective. If you look at all the enterprises I've been involved with, we have very flat organizations in which all the senior managers, all the people are part of the decision making. On a weekly basis at all the companies I'm involved with, we sit around the table with all the senior management and we discuss issues, we communicate, we plan together, we inform a manager what's going on. The manager's job is then to take that same discussion out with the rest of the workforce and have them have the same concept of involvement and discussion. Because I believe to be successful in an organization today, people are committed when they have ownership. And I don't just mean equity ownership, I also mean ownership of going to work every day. They feel part of the organization, they feel involvement. So the first key contributor to success factor, I would say, is people. The second contributing success factor, I'd say, is process. In all the organizations I've been involved with, I've found out that having strong, unique processes are key to success. When I'm talking about processes, I mean a budget process. I mean a strategic planning process. I mean a capital improvement process. I mean a hiring process. To be successful in organizations today, you have to know where you're going and have to know where you want to end up. And to get there, you need strong processes, strong planning. And finally, in terms of the 3 successes that I've seen, is the final, and in many ways, the most important is passion. If you have strong people and you have strong processes, and they're passionate about what they do, then I believe you'll have a much higher chance of success. In all the businesses I've been involved with, I'm passionate about what I do, and the people I work with are passionate about what they do. Not every day they go to work. Some days we all have down days. But most days when I get out of bed, most days the people I'm involved with, I go to work, they love what they do. So I believe in organizations, if you have what I call the 3 Ps, people, process, and passion, I believe the likelihood of success will be greatly enhanced. In my personal case, I often have a personal motto that I refer to, that I call myself, and it comes out of George Bernard Shaw, a British author, in one of his books called Pygmalion and My Fair Lady. And in their book, there is a line, "Happiest is a man who has his vocation for a hobby." And I have my vocation for a hobby. I love business. Business is my passion. So when I go to work every day, I do what I love, and I'm passionate about what I do. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much. We're now going to open the floor to questions. Yes.
You know, you talked about business being your passion. Before that, you said Western Canada was kind of your first passion. Could you expand on that? Why or how do you think Western Canada, or how it differentiates itself, from the rest of the country?
Is that a setup question, or? That's my speech for. That's part of my speech for tonight. No. I'm going to talk a bit about it tonight, but. Having the opportunity to go to law school in Toronto was good for me in a number of ways. It exposed me to a different market, exposed me to a different business practice, but it also made me realize what I really loved about the West. And the one thing I'll say about the West, and I believe this strongly, whether it be Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, is there's a real value set out here, a real culture of working together, of more entrepreneurism. In Toronto, they're more bureaucratic. In the West, we're more entrepreneurial. In the West, we're more can-do. And I love that passion. In the West, I believe that you can achieve your own successes based upon what you do and not where you're from or what your name is. That's more difficult in Eastern Canada. So I think in the West, we're very fortunate. I also think in the West today that we have now what the world wants. We have resources. I'm going to talk about a bit tonight in terms of each province has their own opportunities on the resource side. And so I think we're well positioned into the next number of decades.
Next question. I see there's a finance prop here. Oh, here we go.
Are you a believer in peak oil, sir?
Am I a believer in peak oil? What peak oil refers to as a theory developed by, I don't know if he was an engineer, Hubbard a long time ago, that says if you look at most commodities, at some point they reach a peak in their production curve, and once they reach that peak point, you'll never produce any more of that, and therefore supply will decrease, and what happens when supply of anything decreases and demand increases, prices go up. And so his theory is that oil production has peaked or is going to peak here shortly in around current levels. And as such, that's going to cause oil prices to dramatically increase and have to look for alternative sources of energy. So the question is, do I believe in the peak oil theory? And currently the world produces somewhere around 80 million barrels of oil a day and consumes the same amount of oil. And it had been growing at roughly 1 to 2% a year over the last decade. So on 80 million barrels a day, a 1 to 2% growth is somewhere around 1 million barrels a day of additional production, supply. And it was doing that. It was growing pretty consistently, production, demand and growth through most of the first part of this decade. The last couple of years, the economy slowed down. Oil production has sort of stayed steady, and demand has actually decreased because of switching to other fuels and a slower economy. And I think my answer is economics 101, supply and demand. If prices increase, you will find more demand for products and you will find other ways to find supply. And so I think there are still opportunities for oil production to grow. So I don't believe we've reached the peak, Hubbard peak theory today, because I still think there are opportunities to grow oil production globally in things like the oil sands in Alberta I'll talk about tonight. And so the answer is no, although I would say we're getting to the more marginal barrel, which is going to be more expensive to develop, which means higher prices, higher cost of development, and less growth in demand. I think at the same time you are going to see development of alternative fuels also, so I think that will be the balance of the fossil fuels. So the answer is a long no.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What is your vision and how do you intend to see it through?
My vision on what? My marriage or my... the Calgary Flames or... Yeah. You know, when I look back, I talk about going to business school at the University of Saskatchewan and really what a formative change it was on my sort of full view. I mean, what I developed at the University of Saskatchewan School of Business was a love, a passion for business. And ever since then, you know, I've always just wanted to be involved in business. So that was, I guess, my first vision driver. The second thing that I've really come to been a sort of a guiding post to me is I talked about Arnie convincing me to take this award here. And I have always said and been very gracious that success that I've been involved with has been due to the contribution of a lot of great people that I've been fortunate to work with. And success is, like my view, very much a team. So I guess when I have vision, my vision is to be part of successful organizations, part of an organization that grows, that creates opportunity, that creates jobs, and to share the success with all those involved. And success not just economically, but also giving back to the community, being a leader in the community. And I think, so I guess my vision is being an engaged corporate citizen of society. in terms of contributing wealth, but also giving back and providing leadership to others and making, I guess, making society better for all. And it's a fairly simple vision.
Oh, I think we'll look for someone else first.
So that I might get my $1988,000 investment along the lines of natural resources, which is kind of your expertise, where do you sort of see the energy markets and stuff going where my $1,000 investment might get 5.5?
Well, if I knew, I wouldn't tell you because I would do it first. You know, I mean, you know, I think that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. We once had a study done out of the University of Aberdeen. A professor there did a study, and he said that over the 20 years from like 1988 when we started the company till 2008, Canadian Natural was the highest performing stock in the world. The second highest increase in value over that period of time was a company called Dell Computer. And so it really is a very much once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And you know, to me, I measure less by that relative performance of the stock and more by the fact that I've been part of something that grew and successful and created jobs and it had the camaraderie of teams for building something. So I think you measure success not just economically, but also in terms of those other factors: wealth creation, job creation, being part of a team. And I guess if I was somebody young today, I think that I would look in Western Canada. I think that we are well positioned here relative to our resources. I think we have what the world wants. I would also look for businesses that can capture on that resource opportunity, whether it be directly in the resource sector or in providers of services to the resource sector. Because I mean, whenever you have a major operation, Canadian Natural Resources, for example, we just brought into production our oil sands mine in Fort McMurray. That project was built over a period of 4 years at a cost of $9.6 billion. We had at any one time 10,000 tradesmen on site working. And so when you go through all that math, 9.6 billion, 10,000 tradesmen, there was lots of services provided by lots of organizations and lots of people who did very well along that process. So to me, I would find something where your interest lies, where you think your skills lie, that cater to the resource sector, and I think that would be the best position. Now, whether you'll go from 10 cents to $34, that depends. I think you also have to look, one thing that I've also in business is quite apparent, is that organizations can only achieve certain sizes based upon what the product they deliver. So in other words, if you're a resource company and you can get to a major size, you can become a multi-billion-dollar company. If you're, let's say, a restaurant, you're not going to become multi-billion-dollar. It's just not that opportunity because the market's not that big, so you have to define the market share. That doesn't mean you can't be very successful and enjoy what you do. So remember my third P, passion. Whatever you do, don't just look at the economics, look at the what you love to do and the passion, and also make sure that's part of your success goal. But I would stay with the resource sector.
Our finance professor?
Do you have any advice for Canadian manufacturers with the accelerating capabilities for manufacturing in China?
So you want to come and advise Magellan and we would in Bristol? Yeah, you know, it's funny when I look back on my business career and I go through. I listed many of the public companies I've been involved with. I've been involved with some other ones too, and I've had a number of private investments. They all haven't done as well as Canadian Natural Resources. They've had different degrees of success, and I guess a story that I sometimes tell, when we started Canadian Natural Resources, and we started the company, we literally had $2 million in the bank, and that was it. And we hired a geologist, bright guy, and we hired an engineer, bright guy, and they went off and acquired a piece of land, mineral rights from the government, and they told me it was going to be a sure thing. They said it was a LPC. LPC is a lead pipe cinch. They told me it was going to be guaranteed success. So we took our $2 million and we spent $1 million. We drilled that hole and it was a dry hole. And I guess the good news is we only spent $1 million. We still have $1 million left. But more importantly, the lesson I learned on that, it was probably best that the dry hole was the first one I drilled, because actually in failure you sometimes see success, and it taught me about that in business you're going to have challenges, you're going to have failures. But if you maintain the proper liquidity, if you maintain the proper flexibility, you can get through these challenging periods. So I'm coming back to your question about